Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. This is our TNA show for the week. My name is George Coles. Unfortunately, my partner Gary Rhodes couldn't be here for the show due to other commitments. So let's get right into the show. We have the egomaniac Hulk Hogan comes out to the ring, talk about the Bound for Glory series, brings out Jeff Hardy, which brings out Bobby Roode. Both men argue a little bit, brings out Aces and Eights contingent of Bully Ray, Briscoe, and Bischoff. Bully Ray basically tells Bischoff and Briscoe to attack. Hardy and Roode fend him off. As soon as Hardy's back's turned, Roode hits him in the back of the head. Got a nice hot opening segment. Kind of leads up to the Bound for Glory tournament, also furthering the Aces and Eights storyline. Not bad way to open the show. But right after that, we go into a Bound for Glory qualifying match. The first match of the night, Bad Influence versus Gunner and Storm. Now, unlike other qualifying matches, the tag team that wins gets in. So we had a nice back and forth match. Bad Influences picks up the win in a little bit of a shady thing. They hit Storm in the back of the head with the belt, get the pin on him. Both Kazarian and Christopher Daniels are in the Bound for Glory match, or Bound for Glory series, which I think it's a great idea. I mean, you got two really good wrestlers. Why not put them in there? Why not? You know, there's eventually going to be that match where they wrestle against each other. Maybe even in the finals. That would be cool, in my opinion. But it was a good, nice, hot match. Great tag team match. Gunner and Storm are working out really good as a tag team. I'm very excited about that. James Storm, if you guys have seen, he's been a guy that I really enjoy on this show that I think they don't push properly. And maybe, you know, back in the tag team divisions where he needs to be because he excels in the tag team division. Our next Bound for Glory qualifying match was the returning Crimson versus Joseph Park. Now, before the match, Crimson cuts a promo, talks about 400 and something days he was undefeated. He loses once, and TNA sends him down for a year, basically, almost a year since this time last year in the Bound for Glory series, and this time he's going to win the series. His opponent Joseph Park comes out, they do the thing. Crimson dominates the match. Joseph Park wins with a roll-up. My disappointment in this is, and I've been hot and cold with the Park character, I think it's run its course at this point. Abyss is back, let Abyss be back. You know, we don't need this guy playing two different guys. The problem I have with this is, looking at the Bound for Glory series, who would I rather see in it? Would I rather see Crimson versus Samoa Joe in a match, or Joseph Park versus Samoa Joe? Would I rather see Crimson versus Daniels, Crimson versus Roode, Crimson versus Jeff Hardy? I mean, you see where I'm going with this. The matches, in my opinion, that I'd like to see, I'd rather see Crimson in than Park. You know, and I'm not hating on Joseph Park. Like I said, I've been hot and cold on it. Sometimes it's really enjoying. I do think it's run its course. I think it's time for it to be a dropped character or morphed into the Abyss character. But I just don't think he fits in the Bound for Glory, in my opinion. Next, we have Velvet Sky coming out. She says she has a present for our champion, Mickie James. Mickie James says, well, I don't need a present. You should get a present. You're the Diva of the Month. We have Velvet hands her a manila envelope. In the envelope, it's got her doctor's clearance for Velvet to come back to wrestling. And she said she could challenge her at any point for the world title again. Mickie says, well, let me see that. And she goes, this was cleared yesterday, but today you weren't walking so well. Velvet gives her a funny look, and Mickie proceeds to attack. Great. I mean, they've been subtly hinting at this heel turn. It was a great way to finalize a turn, and Mickey's finally all the way heel. She puts her in a combination, look like a STF a variation of the STF she puts her in. You got Velvet tapping with her knee issue. It makes it to me, it gives a great idea on the storyline, and it keeps the storyline going. The Knockouts storylines have been so strong as of late. I'm really impressed with how they're working these women into the show and showing that women's wrestling could be a big part and an interesting part of the show. Speaking about a big and interesting part of the show, we had a big match up next, another Bound for Glory qualifier. A four-way match, the winner's in, the rest of the three are out. We have Matt Morgan versus Rob Terry versus Kenny King versus Magnus. I'd say it's a decent match. Kenny King worked his spot where he was, letting the other guys do his thing. I thought there was some really cool interactions between Morgan and Terry, two absolute monsters. Magnus picks up the win. He's been riding on a hot streak, as it was alluded to by Mike TNA. I thought the right guy won. Again, the thing that bothers me about Bound for Glory series is I would rather see any of the Kenny King, Rob Terry, or Matt Morgan other than Joseph Parkin. Just my opinion. But I do enjoy Magnus in there. I think there's going to be some great matches with him. Magnus is one of the guys that I think is going to be riding a rocket ship to the top really soon. And maybe the Bound for Glory series is his way to get there. Next we have the Stinger coming out and talking about his future in wrestling. He talks about how he was left alone. The Aces and Eights sent a wave after wrestlers after him, but no one came out to save him. He said the Aces and Eights work like a family, almost like a mafia. He said, I got it. I'm going to bring back the new Main Event Mafia. Decent promo. As everybody knows, some of the guys in the Main Event Mafia are under WWE contract, most notably Booker T and Kevin Nash. Scott Steiner, I believe, has burned his bridge with TNA. I mean, there have been lawsuits going back and forth between the two. But this is pro wrestling. Anything can happen in pro wrestling. So I wouldn't rule out Steiner. The other two guys would be Angle and Samoa Joe that have been in it. Maybe they join the reformation. Maybe it's a new group. But let's hold off on that thought for a second. We'll go right into our question of the week from last week. The question was, with Rampage Jackson coming into TNA, where do you see his career going as far as his impact? We have an answer from one of our friends out there, Metal Ruler 45. Rampage is very entertaining, and he doesn't need to be there every week just have him at the big pay-per-views and a few shows here and there to promote TNA. TNA has enough talented guys, it's just the WWE fans mostly just watch WWE, so no matter who TNA signed, it's not going to make them watch. Going for the MMA mainstream fans is a lot better because of the lack of bias they have. If Rampage can make casual fans want to see Bound for Glory or Impact, then he's done his job. A great opinion on that. I agree with a lot with what you said. Now I think that Rampage Jackson has a lot of fans. Me being one of them. I was a huge fan of his work in Pride and in UFC. I'm a mixed martial arts fan as well as being a wrestling fan. I worry about him because there's a lot of guys that come into wrestling thinking they're better than wrestling. And that's what I worry about with him. Do I see him being as successful as Ken Shamrock, which I think would be the benchmark? He had a very successful wrestling career as well as an MMA career. Time will tell. I don't see him being that, but can he be a serviceable member of both TNA and Bellator at the same time? It hasn't worked as of yet, so hopefully it does. I mean, Bobby Lashley failed. King Mo is still in its early stages to see if that's going to fail or not. But we'll see. I mean, time will tell. I think Rampage has the character and the talent to do it. He has the basis of being a really great wrestler. He can cut an awesome promo. He has a wrestling background. He has an it factor. Fans love him. So could he be? He could be. He could be the next Kurt Angle, or he could be just another guy that's come in to cash a paycheck. speaking of cashing paychecks and speaking of what we spoke about just before the question of the week, our question of the week for this week is going to be, who do you see Sting bringing into the main event Mafia? Could be someone new, could be an old guy. Let us know what you think. Hit us up on our Twitter, hit us up on Facebook, put it down where? Down there, right down there in the comments. And we'll tell you about some of our opinion and some of the guys we think of next week. Now, coming off of that, after our questions of the week, we go right back into another Bound for Glory qualifying match. We have Eric Young versus Austin Aries. I quite enjoyed this match. I enjoyed the interaction between the two. I enjoyed ODB's involvement in the match. Eric Young is one hell of an entertaining guy. I really wish that he was on TV more than he is, and I understand he's doing the fishing show, and that takes up a lot of his time. More power to you, brother. I mean, I guess I'm just selfish on this one, because he's one of those characters, he's a comedy character, but he's a comedy character that pulls it off well. And he can absolutely go when he needs to. That being said, Austin Aries picks up the win, gets into the Bound for Glory series. Another great wrestler in there. I think the series, for the most part, is starting to really come together and come together well. Now, after that, we have our final we have two more qualifiers. The Aces and Eights get one entry into the Bound for Glory series, and how they're going to determine that is by a battle royal. Well, they show backstage, they all drew cards. They don't say who, but one person's going to win. They get into the ring, and Mr. Anderson's the guy. He's the guy that picked the ace. He does some of the... I guess it's some shots at Hogan. He does the point, and one of them jumps out. He tells Devon to get the table. Devon goes over the top rope. He does the finger poke of doom, and Knox goes out. I mean, just some funny stuff. There was an interesting angle at the end where Doc was the last one in the ring with Anderson, and Doc decided to fight with Anderson. Maybe some dissension later. Maybe that'll lead to starting to see the cracks in Aces and Eights. I mean, we've seen D'Lo getting kicked out. Maybe we're starting to see Doc maybe break off, become a face, maybe fight against them. Who knows? I mean, the way they're using his character now, him breaking off of Aces and Eights couldn't hurt. I mean, they're barely using him. He's not even wrestling matches anymore. The go-to guys seem to be Anderson, Briscoe, and Bischoff. Doc and Nux barely wrestle. Bully Ray and Devon do, but maybe Doc breaking off will do wonders for him. Maybe not. But Anderson does win. He gets into the Bound for Glory series. Interesting ad. Hopefully, maybe he'll be the guy that wins it all. Maybe there'll be an interesting angle where they'll play it up where him and Bully Ray wrestle, kind of like Batista and Triple H in the Evolution days. Next, we have our main event and another qualifying match: Kurt Angle versus AJ Styles. Good match, not as good as the one on the pay-per-view. A little bit marred by an Aces and Eights run-in at the end. AJ takes a distraction to his advantage, rolls up, Kurt gets the win. After the match, Aces and Eights come after Kurt Angle, and that brings out Rampage Jackson. They clear the ring. Rampage and Kurt standing there back-to-back, shaking hands as friends. After last week, they had a little confrontation, and earlier in the night, they worked it out backstage. Kurt Angle said, what I meant was that you have to train hard till you can get to my level. I wouldn't expect to go right into Bellator and be able to beat you. And they kind of worked out their differences. It's good to see Rampage with use on this. Again, his star power at the main event with Kurt Angle, right where he fits in. Hopefully he could get to wrestling training very soon, and we'll get to see him actually wrestle. Now, before we go into our ratings, we have something we do every week. It's the Hulk Hogan count, Thunderlips count, Suburban Commando count, Ego count, whatever you want to call it, for the night. And we had one Thunderlips. surprisingly low on a show like this, especially since he was in the main storyline of last week's show. I expected him to be out more. I think the product is at its best when we have 1 or 2 Hogan appearances at most, and tonight was not an exception. I thought the program was better for the limited use of Hogan. That being said, we're going to go right into our rating system. Basically, if you watched our show before, we rate our shows on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. A 1's a Garrett Bischoff, 2's a Christian York, 3's a James Storm, 4's a Daniels, and 5 is a Kurt Angle. I'm honestly going to give this a number. I'm going to give it a 4. Woo! A Christopher Daniels. I thought the show was very good. It was very entertaining to me. The Bound for Glory matches had me entertained. Mickey and Velvet's interaction had me entertained. Sting announcing the main event Mafia coming back has me intrigued as to what will go on. The returns of Crimson and Eric Young were entertaining to me. 2 guys I like to see coming back. Aces and Eights continue to do what Aces and Eights do. It didn't feel as forced or as shoved down our throat as it has at times. The only downfall I had on the match was, or on the night, was Crimson versus Park. I would have rather seen Crimson win. But hey, what are you going to do? If I could look at this up and down this board and see only one downfall, then it's been a good night. But basically, that's all I got to say about this. My name is George Coles, and this has been Heel Heat.